Let's go Lions! As we approach the 2025 draft, the Detroit Lions front office is on high alert to bring in the best possible prospects. We need to talk about something very important, but before we go any further, make sure you've hit the like button if you've been a Detroit Lions fan for over 22 years. There are people here who have been fans since the 70s. Maximum respect. One pride. Okay, so let's get to the point. The Detroit Lions front office is in the headlines again, and this time it's about something that could shake up the entire NFC North. Reports have surfaced that the Lions were the most aggressive team in pursuing a trade for Myles Garrett at last season's trade deadline, and that they remain in talks with Cleveland as we approach the offseason. But the real question is, how serious is this? Is Brad Holmes finally ready to make the kind of move that would redefine Detroit's defense? Or is this just another case of almost making a big move? We have to talk about Brad Holmes here. He's made it clear that he values defense, but there's been a major disconnect when it comes to how he's actually built the roster. The secondary has seen more investment in both free agency and the draft than the defensive line. That's just a fact. Look at the signings. Look at the draft picks. Resources have been allocated heavily to the back end, leaving the front line thin and overly reliant on a few key players. And yet, every year, we hear rumors about Detroit trying to sign a pass rusher. First, it was Danielle Hunter. Now it's Myles Garrett. But was Holmes really willing to pay the price? Holmes has a reputation, whether fair or not, of being hesitant when it comes to making blockbuster moves. His biggest free agent signing so far? Cameron Sutton at $33 million over 3 years? And we all saw how that turned out. That deal didn't just flop. It imploded before Sutton even stepped onto the field for the 2024 season. So if Holmes has never been the guy to break the bank for a superstar, why would Myles Garrett suddenly be different? What would change from the trade deadline to now? Sure, the salary cap went up, but if Holmes was aggressive then, he should be just as aggressive now. There's another key reason to be skeptical. Holmes has never traded a first-round pick for a player. That's a huge sticking point, because Garrett isn't coming cheap. If you want a game-wrecking pass rusher, you have to pay the price. We've seen GMS like Howie Roseman and Les Snead pull the trigger on deals that push their teams to the next level. If Holmes wants to prove that he's on that level, this is the moment. No more almosts. No more we tried. Either you go all in or you don't. But let's be real. If this trade actually happens, everything changes for the Lions. Adding Myles Garrett to this roster would turn Detroit into a legitimate Super Bowl contender overnight. We've all seen what Aidan Hutchinson can do when he has even a little bit of help. Now imagine the havoc he could wreak with Garrett on the other side. Suddenly, this defense that has struggled to get after elite quarterbacks, it becomes a nightmare for opposing offenses. And honestly, this move should have happened a year ago. If Detroit had a dominant pass rusher opposite Hutchinson in the 2023 NFC Championship game, are we even talking about the Lions falling short? Or are we talking about Detroit making its first ever Super Bowl appearance? That's the kind of impact we're dealing with. And now, in 2024, the Lions are at a crossroads. Do they continue to build for the future? Or do they recognize that their time is now? One thing is clear. Lions fans aren't going to accept another offseason of excuses. No more settling for mid-tier free agents when elite talent is available. If Holmes was willing to go all in for Garrett before, what's stopping him now? If he backs off, it tells us everything we need to know. So let's hear it, Detroit. Do you believe the rumors? Is this the moment Holmes finally makes the move that solidifies this defense, or are we going to be having this same conversation again next year? Drop your thoughts below. Do you trust Brad Holmes to deliver?
And that's the real question, isn't it? Do we trust Brad Holmes to finally break his pattern and make the move that takes Detroit over the top? Because if history tells us anything, he's been cautious, methodical, and sometimes frustratingly hesitant to push his chips to the center of the table. The problem? The Lions are no longer a rebuilding team. They're not trying to claw their way out of mediocrity. This is a team that was one half of football away from the Super Bowl. That's why this trade rumor carries so much weight. If it were any other year, we'd probably dismiss it. We'd say, oh, Detroit looked into it, but they weren't really serious. But this year, this window, this is different, because this time, there's no excuse not to make a move. Look at the way other Super Bowl contenders operate. The 49ers, they went out and traded for Chase Young midseason to bolster their pass rush. The Eagles, they've been stockpiling defensive talent for years, using trades, free agency, and the draft to make sure their front seven stays elite. The Chiefs, they never let their defense become a liability. And then there's Detroit, a team that has been one of the worst in the league in quarterback pressures outside of Aidan Hutchinson. A team that went into last season knowing they needed another dominant edge rusher and did nothing significant to fix it. A team that had every opportunity to land a big-time defensive lineman in free agency but instead signed Marcus Davenport, a player coming off a 4-game season. So here's where we stand. If the reports are true, if the Lions were really the most aggressive team in pursuing Myles Garrett, then why is he still in Cleveland? If Brad Holmes was willing to go all in before, why hasn't he already closed the deal? This is where actions speak louder than words. Being interested in an elite pass rusher means nothing. Every GM in the league would love to have Myles Garrett on their team. What separates the real contenders from the teams that almost get there is the willingness to pay the price to get the job done. Holmes has made some smart moves, no doubt. He locked up Amon-Ra St. Brown and Penei Sewell, making them two of the highest paid players at their positions. He's about to hand out another massive contract to Aidan Hutchinson. That tells us one thing. He's not afraid to spend money on his guys. But that's different from being aggressive in the trade market. So the question remains, is he willing to go outside of his comfort zone to put this team over the top? Because trading for Myles Garrett would do exactly that. It would send a message to the entire NFC that the Lions aren't just a nice story anymore. They aren't just a team on the rise. They're here to win it all. If Holmes pulls this off, it changes everything. It shows that he recognizes the missing piece on this team and is willing to do whatever it takes to fix it. It would mean Detroit isn't just hoping to contend, they're demanding it. And honestly, if we see this front office let another elite pass rusher slip through their hands and then settle for another value signing like Marcus Davenport, fans are going to be furious. Because here's the bottom line. If this team had an elite pass rush last year, they're probably playing in the Super Bowl right now. That's how close they were. That's how much of a difference this move could make. So what's it going to be? Are the Lions really serious about taking the next step, or are we going to be sitting here next year asking the same questions? Let me know what you think, Lions fans. Is this the year Brad Holmes finally makes the move we've all been waiting for? Would you give up a first-round pick and whatever else it takes to land Myles Garrett? Or do you think this is just another off-season rumor that will fade away when the real action starts? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And that's where things get interesting. If Brad Holmes doesn't make this move, then what? Are we really going to enter 2024 relying on mid-tier pass rushers and hoping for the best? Let's be real. The NFC is wide open. The Eagles are falling apart. The Cowboys always choke. And the 49ers, while elite, aren't unbeatable. The Lions were one half away from a Super Bowl. They don't need a rebuild. They need one or two pieces to push them over the top. Myles Garrett is that piece. He's not just a good pass rusher. He's one of the best defensive players of this generation. Pairing him with Aidan Hutchinson wouldn't just improve the defense, it would make them dominant. It would free up the secondary, force mistakes, and give the offense more opportunities. And here's the thing, these opportunities don't come often. Superstar edge rushers don't just hit the trade market every year. The teams that go get them, they compete for championships. So, Brad Holmes, are you going to do this or not? Because if the Lions really were the most aggressive team at the deadline, why haven't they closed the deal? What's stopping them? If this trade happens, Holmes cements himself as an elite GM. If it doesn't, we're looking at another year of Hutchinson getting double-teamed while relying on guys who can't get it done in the playoffs. And honestly, Lions fans deserve better. So let me know, do you think this trade is real, or is it just another false alarm? If Holmes doesn't make this move and it costs us another playoff run, fans will remember. Let's talk about it. Go Lions!